Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And this is going to be me guys a spoiler-free review of James Wan's Malignant. Now, recently I've been getting a lot more into horror movies, so I decided to check this one out, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. But before we get into it, if you guys are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. But don't waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So, Malignant by James Wan. This movie follows Madison, played by Annabelle Wallis. She's a woman who begins having terrifying visions of murders. These shocking dreams paralyze her with fear, and they're only getting worse until she realizes that these aren't actually dreams or visions, but reality. Now, this movie had a pretty shocking twist in the third act, but other than that, it wasn't really that crazy in my opinion. Now, I want to start off by talking about just the first act. I thought the first act was almost perfect. Now, I know I said that the third act was like probably the best with that super crazy twist, but the first act really got me intrigued, and that was also probably the most scary part just because we didn't really know much about the entire town. We didn't know much about the lore of this movie. This is an original story by James Wan. This isn't something based off of another movie, or this isn't a sequel to anything. This isn't based off of a book or a previous movie. It's not attached to a single thing, so I had no idea what to expect going in, and I came out pretty pleased, I'm gonna be honest, but I really didn't have expectations going in, so that does say a lot, I'm gonna be honest. Like I said before, the first act, absolutely awesome. It really intrigued me just because, again, we didn't know much about this lore. I love the character introductions. I will say the side characters in this movie aren't the best. The main character, who is Madison, played by Annabelle Wallis, I think her name is, she is actually really great. Her acting is top tier throughout the entirety of the movie, not just the first act, but her performance in the first act, as well as her being in this abusive relationship and how that all correlates to the end, which I won't say here because no spoilers, obviously. But if you guys want a spoiler review, let me know in the comments down below because I have a lot to say about this movie overall, whether it's good or bad. But going back to it, I do think that this movie's first act set up for a great second act and finale, but the second act wasn't really the best. I really honestly got really bored. It wasn't my type of thing. I don't really know how to explain it without spoiling it, so I'm gonna try to just jump around spoilers, obviously. But I thought the second act was really mid. I thought it was really average. I, again, didn't have many expectations going in, but the second act was just taking me completely out of the movie. I didn't feel like it was important at all, especially once I saw the third act. I was like, why did we spend this much time doing all this? And no, this movie is 2 hours long. I think honestly they could have just cut down the second act a little bit. The second act had important development for side characters, but I didn't really care for these side characters. It also did make the killer in the movie seem a lot more hectic and crazy and absolutely insane, which we find out later. Some other stuff which I don't really want to spoil, but we find out a lot of stuff later in the movie that involves main plot points in the second act. So the second act obviously is very important. The second act of every movie is important because it leads into the finale, the final act. But it was kind of boring to me, I'm gonna be honest. I think the second act should have been cut down. It was cool, but it was just average, still kind of enjoyable. I will say, actually no, the first act was awesome and enjoyable. Second act was average and very slightly enjoyable just because of how well it set up the third act. And the third act, that was absolutely insane. The third act started off with that massive twist in the movie, which again, I will not be talking about here. If you guys want me to do a spoiler review, let me know. But the third act, absolutely crazy. The quote final battle, which it kind of happens in the middle of the third act, doesn't necessarily happen at the end like most final battles do. But the middle of the third act really, really, really surprised me. The final battle looked like it was straight out of a video game in the best way possible. Like the movements, the fighting style, everything looked like it was straight out of like a Spider-Man video game. Obviously she wasn't swinging around, but just the fighting style, the kicks, the knives. Also, it was so gory, and the way that they set up this third act with that twist and then kind of going through the entire backstory, actually giving us a purpose for the second act and the first act. After giving us all of that purpose, it just goes downtown. It gets hectic and I love it. Another movie that got really hectic this year was Shang-Chi, and I absolutely loved it. It boosted a tone to 1000%. This movie did the same thing, and I loved it. I think that it really embraced that horror aspect. It did feel kind of childish at times when it came to the physics of some things, but overall, it was a fun time, and I love the knife. I love the gore. I love, when I say the knife, you guys know, if you guys are on Twitter or anything like that, there's a hashtag, so I'm not spoiling anything, but the killer basically has like a signature knife, I guess, and the way that the knife is used is absolutely beautiful. beautiful and perfect. I love it so much. Also, cinematography. We know James Wan is a god tier masterclass man with the camera, and this movie really does show it off, in my opinion. I also will say the score is absolutely beautiful. I love most of James Wan's score, and it's just honestly awesome. I really do love what they did with the score. Also, the sound design in general, the killer, the way that his sound is just, oh my god, it's perfect. Okay, I honestly wish they had Dolby screenings for this movie because it would have sounded even better. Also, I'm gonna be honest, in the first act, I was about to like cover my ears like most of the time because I was so scared, because I really didn't know what to expect. Again, this is a fully original story. We have really no backstory on this lore other than these trailers. Also, the trailers do not do this movie justice. The trailers are way worse than the movie itself. The movie's actually pretty good. I will not say it's like a crazy good movie, but it's still a pretty good movie compared to what the trailers are advertising. Also, the advertisement in general is just really bad. Apparently what happened was they did an early screener for this movie, like a test screening basically, and apparently people were laughing at the movie. They said it was so bad that the theater was laughing, and so apparently Warner Brothers is really skeptical about actually releasing this movie. And now a lot of people, and apparently that's why they didn't give out early screeners. When I have this thing where I can get early screeners for movies. There was one early screener, and it was in Hollywood. Most of the time they have early screeners in like Houston, Orlando, Tampa, New York, all of the bigger cities. They had one for this movie. So I think, and also they just honestly didn't have any press releases or anything like that. I just think they were scared to release this movie, and I think they were completely wrong. I think this movie is actually pretty great, and I think you need to go out and see it or just watch it on HBO Max again. I think, honestly, the sound design in this movie is pretty peak. I think it might have the best sound design behind A Quiet Place Part 2 and maybe The Green Knight of this year, but it's still really well edited, and overall the CGI is also great. The CGI is almost perfect. There's like one or two scenes where they like have the tiniest thing. Like one of them is like, it's literally a bullet shot. It looks so bad. That's like the only thing. I don't understand how they did that one thing bad and they make everything else look absolutely perfect, like bone breaking, blood, literally like absolutely crazy, insane fatality level kills. They make all of those look absolutely gorgeous, but they make some bullet holes look really bad. I don't really understand it. Overall, this movie was pretty good though. So my final thoughts on Malignant. I thought it was average but enjoyable through the first two acts, but the final act really ramped it up. This was my first time watching a horror movie alone in theaters, and the first act shook me to my core. The score is perfect, and the twist shocked my entire theater. Overall, I'm gonna have to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. I actually thought this was pretty fun. I don't think it's one of the top movies of the year by any means, but it's still in the top half of movies this year. Again, if you want to check it out, I really recommend checking it out in theaters, but I don't think it's really a necessary watch in theaters. If you have HBO Max, check it out there. I think it's definitely worth the watch in general. Again, if you've already seen Malignant, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Try to keep it spoiler free for those who haven't seen it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.